Please take a seat. The February meeting of the Mashpee Sewer Commission is about to start. Today is Thursday, February 20th, 2025, and we are meeting at the Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck North, Mashpee, Massachusetts, 02649 in the Wacoit Room. Broadcasting live on local channel 8 or high-def channel 1072. Streamed live on the town website, www.mashpeema.gov/channel-8. My name is Alfred Toll, and I am the vice chair, and I will be chairing the meeting today. I hereby call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As is our custom, let's bow our heads for a moment of silence. Thank you. Commissioners, for the record-keeping purposes, please state your name, starting with Mohan on my left.
It's Mohan Nair.
Joe Lyons.
Al Toll, and...
Catherine Castaneda.
And?
Meredith Harris.
Okay, thank you very much. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes of January 16th, 2025.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. The next portion of the meeting is set aside for public comment. Do we have any takers? Would you please come and have a seat at the desk and state your name and your street address? And you have 5 minutes.
Okay. My name is Sarah Gorsica. I'm at 20 Shipwreck Drive. Okay. My question is, having gone to your website, I came across these fees that were going to be apparently charged for the sewage. I have a lot of questions about these fees, and why weren't these published before or acknowledged to people who are involved or going to be forced to hook up? My main question is the $200. I mean, Falmouth yearly annual bill for their charge is $124. We have a $200 charge, it looks like. It's very difficult to even understand what your chart is, but it says $200 quarterly, okay? My belief is that you're going to use the water district's water charges. And they only come out every 6 months. If you look at your bill, you only get it every 6 months. But on your chart, it's quarterly. You also have a fee for application fee. And I hope that you are not going to be charging homeowners who are being forced to hook up to pay another additional $200 to pay a fee for application. And nothing is on the fee board about people who are not hooked up to water. How are they being charged? What are their fees going to be? And my last question is, with all this going on, that you want the nitrogen levels down, I believe, down to 19%, I'm not sure, that's still the same number. Are you going to require every other commercial or residential area that has a wastewater treatment plant to meet that same requirement, because right now they don't have to. So these are my main questions.
That's,
I know it's a lot of
That's a
questions,
lot of
but I was
questions.
kind of shocked when I read
yes.
it.
Why don't you take them one at a time and pose a question so we can answer it?
Okay.
Excuse me. So public comment sessions, according to the town bylaw, is not for us to answer. We're supposed to listen to the questions during public comment, thank them for the comments. We can address it another time, but not supposed to address it at the meeting during public comment.
Okay, we have on record the questions.
Yes, and we can address them at a later date. I think it's just because these questions could go into things that should have been put in the agenda, and if people weren't here to hear the answers.
Okay, so what we'll do is we have written down all of your questions,
Okay.
and we will answer them.
Will I get a
probably
written
at the next
response
meeting.
as to my
Yes.
answers?
If you could leave us your email address, we can absolutely give you a written response, but we'll also address it most likely at the next meeting.
Okay, and I will be asked, or
Yeah, we
notified
could-
when this will be discussed?
Yeah, it's-
Because I
it's-
think people in Mashpee have the right to know this. You always talk about transparency, and I come across this on your website, knew nothing. None of my neighbors knew anything about this.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is really unfair, I must say, but
If, like I said, if you can leave the questions with your email address, and if you need a piece of paper, I can give you one, that way you can write it down for us, and then we can give you an individual written response, but it'll also be discussed at the meeting at a future date. And if you go to the town webpage and look at the agenda, you should be able to see when that agenda comes up, what the discussion will be about.
Thank you very much. Do we have someone else for comments at this time? Hearing none, we will move on. The outline shows that we have no outstanding business at this time to be presented, which is great news. Under new business, it seems as if GHD has the floor for the rest of the business. And Sandy, would you give us just a quick update on construction and finances as we stand right now?
Sure will, yeah. Sandy Tripp with GHD. I didn't prepare a normal presentation like I would because I know that my colleague Mark is going to
Yes.
present some other things. The good news is on the plant side is the MCCs have arrived, and they immediately were offloaded, taken down into the building. They have been terminating wires and getting these set up, and we're going to start some equipment startup. This is first thing they do is they're going to make sure that manufacturers will come out and make sure that everything's installed correctly, and before they energize them, and then when they energize them, they'll make sure they turn the right way. I've been present when a pump went backwards and contractor got a face full of water, but just water. But that's why we do these things. Eventually, we'll get into functional tests and then system tests, and then further on in the spring, we'll be doing a Clearwater test for DEP and for you folks. And then we'll start taking in wastewater in the spring, as we discussed. On phase 2, we're pursuing the designs, and we still have some linear work going on in the areas with the phase 1A project. But I can give a more detailed report next month, but open to questions if you have any.
Questions?
What did we have to dig up?
Do we have to dig up?
What did we have to dig up? You were digging things up on Friday, on Wednesday,
Where was this?
right in front of the main building. Do we
I
have a
don't know.
pipe problem, a drainage problem, or,
I don't think so. I don't know, honestly.
well, we had a backhoe.
It
in
didn't
there.
come to me,
We had
so
a backhoe in there, and he was down about 12 feet when I walked by him.
Wow.
on the plant site.
Yes.
Okay, I do not know what they were doing.
I was just wondering if we had any major problem.
No, nothing, it didn't elevate to me, so no, it wasn't major.
No, 'cause that sort of thing happens when you start up the
Does.
pumps and everything, yeah.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Okay.
So next, Mark.
Thank you. Mark Drainville with GHD. So I'm primarily here today to talk about an update to your watershed management plan. You've probably heard the term notice of project change floating around. That's a Department of Environmental Protection term for updating a plan. Okay, so just it's the same thing you've heard before. Just trying to give it a little bit of a more understandable name. So this is an update to your 2015 plan. So your 2015 plan was a nitrogen management plan, and as part of your approval that came from the state, you're required to do an update after each phase. Okay, so that's what this is. As I think you know, we did do this presentation before the Board of Selectmen a few weeks ago, obviously here today to present to your board, and then after that, we eventually want to go before the MEPA process. MEPA is the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. That is a public review process. What happens is we would submit the document to MEPA, and they would distribute it to a number of state agencies for review comments. They would come back to the town to respond to those comments. We would submit again, and we would then get a final certificate. Okay, it's with approval certificate. Okay, so it's a couple more hurdles to go through. All right, and with that, this is a little bit of a lengthy presentation, so if you bear with me, please stop me at any point if you'd like clarifications though, okay? So, as I think you all are aware, this process began with the Massachusetts Estuaries Project. The Mass Estuaries Project looked at a number of different watersheds within the state. I think it's 80 or so watersheds, and documented the water quality within those watersheds. In Mashpee, there's several watersheds that they looked at. There are two of them primarily, Wacoit and Pompanesett, that have a significant number of monitoring stations, and those monitoring stations have been looked at over, starting in 2010 up till the present, and there's been a decline in the water quality that's continued over the years. Okay. This map that you see up here is from your 2015 plan. It shows the plan at the time. It outlined a combination of nitrogen management strategies that included sewering, a municipal sewering plan, and it also included connections to private treatment facilities, so municipal connections to private facilities. It also included a shellfish propagation program and an adaptive management program. Adaptive management is the process by which you would modify your plan. As time goes on, as more monitoring continues, you may see a need to pivot the plan. The changes that needed to happen with this one were a result of, frankly, continued declining water quality. So this plan is different from the 2015 plan to take into account the declining water quality that we've seen. So in 2023, there was regulatory changes. The state modified the Title V regulations, and they implemented a watershed permitting process. What this outlined were, it provided towns with two options. One of them was to go down a watershed permitting process. The other option was you would be forced into putting in on-site IA systems for all of the properties in a nitrogen-sensitive watershed, even if that's not the solution. And I can tell you that that's not the solution for you. So that would be nothing more than a penalty. So the town went down the watershed permitting process, which was the right way to go. Okay. What that does is it's going to put you on a schedule to come into compliance with your nitrogen TMDLs, your nitrogen toll goals. You have to meet 75% of that within 20 years. And then after that, you would have to meet the balance of that, the 25%. So that's the schedule that the state implemented with the changes to Title V. So the town submitted what's called a notice of intent for 2 watersheds. That notice of intent is a phrase that's also used in conservation arena, but it's the notice of intent that you're going to go down the watershed permitting process. So we submitted that for Pompanesett Bay and Wacoit Bay. 3 of the watersheds you have very little impact on, and that's 3 Bays, Green Pond, and Bourne's Pond. So we submitted what's called a de minimis waiver request, and all of these were accepted by the state. Right now, the schedule would put the town at having to submit an application for a watershed permit for Pompanesett Bay and for Wacoit Bay no later than 2030. And then that would put you on a schedule to complete your 75% compliance within 20 years. Okay? So that's the time frame allowed by the state. So you would have to get a second permit to hit the balance of the 25% that you wouldn't meet in the first 20 years. I'm going to cover a little bit of what you've accomplished, and I know you're all going to know this, but I'll just quickly go through this. So the phase 1 implementation is near complete, at least for the major infrastructure. You have a water resource recovery facility that's about to go through a startup, and you have the core of your central sewering that's in place. You've also initiated a shellfish propagation program. Feasibility evaluations for municipal connections to existing facilities have been completed, and a feasibility study on implementing soft solutions for restoring the Quashnet and Moonacus River have been completed too. In addition, the phase 2 implementation has begun. The design is well underway at this point. Construction is looking to start on the heels of your phase 1 starting up. And the shellfish propagation program is continuing. So, watershed management plan update is going to require, is a requirement for the completion of each phase. You're near the end of phase 1, and that's, again, why we're doing this update right now. This plan has an update on your TMDL compliance, and that is, how are you going to meet your nitrogen management goals? And those change as time goes on. For example, population growth, there's all these factors that have to come into play. So as each phase is completed, an update of this plan is going to be necessary to make sure you're on track. So some of the components that are included in this plan, alternative nitrogen management strategies include stormwater, fertilizer, shellfish propagation, and wetland restoration projects. So those are all included to the extent possible at this time. In addition, for conventional nitrogen management strategies, we have IA systems, which remain a component of your plan, as well as municipal sewering and wastewater treatment. So those are the primary components of the plan. And then, as I've mentioned before, adaptive management is going to maintain a presence within your planning process to update for population growth, for changes within the town. So this is going to be a necessary component going forward. So as far as your nitrogen management goals are concerned, the initial evaluation started with the Mass Estuaries project. So that was a snapshot in time where they looked at the population and the water use as it stood at the time and came up with a nitrogen removal that would be required. They did those on a watershed basis, okay? And then what the town had to do is then meet with your neighbors who shared those watersheds and figure out your individual share, okay, for each of those watersheds. And that was done through intermunicipal agreements, and those have been completed on the major watersheds. What we've done for this current plan is we've updated the water use using 2019 to 2021 water use data. The Mass Estuaries project used data from prior to 2010, so we do update these as time goes on. Took a look at the flow neutral regulation. That is a change that's occurred since your 2015 plan. So that flow neutral regulation was put into place, I believe, in 2021. And used other components to update the plan. So I'm going to go through some of the plan components. So I mentioned that fertilizer and stormwater are both part of your plan. The state allows you to take a credit for nitrogen reduction through a fertilizer bylaw as well as stormwater management. So we are taking that credit. You do have a fertilizer bylaw, and for stormwater, that reduction in nitrogen would occur as you implement stormwater projects, stormwater management projects. So those will have to be monitored over time. In the select board meeting a few weeks ago, I was asked by the town manager how one might monitor the progress on a fertilizer bylaw. That's not something that's specifically in place, that requirement with the state, but that's something that may come in at some point. So those are a couple of components of the plan that we're allowed to take that credit. The shellfish propagation, that was a big component of the 2015 plan. It had to be scaled back because of the declining water quality. The amount of shellfish that we can count on to help us with nitrogen reduction has been reduced, but it still remains a part of the plan. In addition, there are some wetland and habitat restoration projects that are being considered, Red Brook, Quashnet, and Mashpee River. So these are mentioned as something that is going to be part of your plan, but these are not currently strategies that the state accepts without you monitoring to show the success of them. So we couldn't count on that credit yet, but perhaps in the next update of this plan with monitoring results, you will be able to, okay? So the state only allows you to take credit on things that that has been demonstrated to be successful. This is just a general idea that shows you the performance of different on-site systems. I have this mainly here for the public use, but you could see everything from a Title V system making your way down to a municipal wastewater treatment facility. You could see the performance levels for nitrogen coming out of those different systems. And the performance of the municipal system is quite significant compared to some of these other systems. So that's the one that we can rely on to have the greatest level of removal, okay? So I mentioned that private treatment facilities were a part of your 2015 plan. You, as I think you know, have a number of private facilities in town. There were some facilities that were specifically targeted as part of that plan. Those did not play out as being facilities that we could rely on going forward. However, they all play a role in meeting your nitrogen goals going forward. And we are currently looking at some different private treatment facilities, potentially in the same manner that the 2015 plan looked at for potentially to take in some municipal connections. So that they remain an option, and we'll have to continue to look at them, and some of them might work out. For on-site septic systems, the primary option here is the IA systems, the innovative systems that can produce nitrogen effluent. Right now, the systems are approved at 19 milligrams per liter, but there are systems that are close to being accepted at around 11 milligrams per liter, okay? In 2024, the Board of Health revised their regulations, required IA septic systems within 1,000 feet of different surface water bodies. So those are going to help. Those are at the 19 milligram per liter limit, but going forward, we may have better performing systems. They're required for all new construction, increases in flows, and any other installation or upgrade of a septic system. So again, those are Mashpee specific requirements, and those are incorporated into this plan. And they're primarily, we're counting in those primarily outside of the denser parts of town. So this is an update of the figure that nobody likes, but let me just talk about it for a minute. It is important, and let me just tell you what it shows. I'm not looking for you to look at this figure and find your house on it, but it does show with the colors the extensive sewering that's going to be required in town to meet the nitrogen TMDLs. Okay, so it is, these are all the highly dense, the densely populated areas of the town that we're targeting for sewering. And that's what that's intended to show. We have a total of 8 phases of sewering going out through not only the first watershed permit, but through both watershed permits to achieve ultimately 100% compliance with your nitrogen goals. So I just have a couple of views showing the northern part of town here. You could see with the town boundary, we're trying to get most of the areas that are in close proximity to the central part of the town for ease of connecting sewers. The central part of town, you could see a combination of new sewering as well as there's existing sewers with private sewers, so there's quite an extensive network of sewering. And then the southern part of town, you can see the far southern part of town is not in a watershed, but we are, trying to grab a lot of the densely populated areas within Wacoit and Pompanesett Bay. So we did do a build-out analysis as part of this evaluation, and took a look at the potential size of treatment facilities both in Pompanesett Bay as well as Wacoit Bay. We came up with layouts, which I'll share with you. And the layouts right now, both we're looking at a couple of facilities, and as you know, I think from your current facility, it's a modular setup. So, you will add to that as you need to. You're not going to have something that you don't have flow to send to. Okay. So the idea is that you build and you expand as you need it. So for Pompanesett Bay, we have your water resource recovery facility that's currently being constructed. It is already set up for a phase 2 and additional phases. And as you'll see, I'll show you a figure that shows expansion to doubling the size of what was originally anticipated for that site. So I'll share that in a minute. The big item that is unknown for Pompanesett Bay, we have the space for treatment. What we don't have is we don't yet have space for treated water recharge. Okay, right now we have enough space to treat the wastewater for phases 1 and 2. 2 is currently under design. But beyond that, we don't have. It's not that they may not exist, but we're going to have to find those sites in order to make that work. Okay. For Wacoit, oh yes.
So when you say you don't have space for the recharge, does that mean you don't have space for enough sand beds, or what?
So right now we do not. Yes. The original. So if you go back, let's say 5 or 6 years ago. There was a hope that we would be able to get a lot more flow into the space that we have allocated for the sand beds. The rules at DEP have changed, and it's drastically limited the amount of flow we can get into those sand beds. So we'll have to find more sites or demonstrate that the issue is protection of surface water bodies. We'll have to demonstrate that the surface water bodies are still being protected.
Okay, so just want to make sure that I understand it. So this water resource recovery facility is designed for 8 phases, right?
It's designed for,
I mean,
so I mentioned there are 8 phases of sewering.
Right.
So it's designed for the amount of sewering that's going to be required in Pompanesett Bay.
Okay, so
Okay, the 8 phases of sewering actually covers both Pompanesett and Wacoit Bay.
Okay,
Okay, we have enough capacity, we have enough treatment capacity on that site to handle the amount of sewering that's required in Pompanesett Bay.
So if that is the location of all the 8 phases, then you have to find the recharge area in that in that location. There's no other way.
No,
So you can send it, it doesn't have to be on that site. We can send it elsewhere, and that's
Oh.
what other towns
Yeah.
on the Cape are doing now.
Send it as in by pipe or something?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yep, yep. So,
that's not a total negative right now. We just can't, I tell you, where it's going. There
correct,
are options.
correct. That's
okay?
correct.
We got 2 more streams that we'll need to put on eventually, and they will require more disposal area.
Okay.
Now, I have a question. What's going on with all of the wood processing being removed from the transfer area? Has that company been given
I don't know that I can answer that question.
I looked there, there's no trucks, no equipment, and nothing in process.
I haven't heard anything. That would be a question I have to refer to Catherine
Okay,
and get an answer about.
but that area is also accessible to us. The area behind the processing right now, behind the solar panels. That person is renting the space. In other words, it's additional town space that wasn't considered in the original design. So that space is still available, so we may be able to even drop water there.
If that becomes available, that might be another spot.
Well, it is available.
Yep, yep.
All we have to do is make the decision.
Yep, yep. But you're right, Joe, that there's other spots that, you know, we could get to, we just haven't identified them yet. So it's identifying those additional sites, that's the next step, okay, in Pompanesett Bay. For Wacoit, we are, there was a site that was identified in the 2015 plan, it was called in the Back Road Site area. We are taking a look at that right now, looking at the best site for a treatment facility out there as well as recharge area. And we have identified some good sites so far, so I think that's underway right now. So this is your current site, and let me just tell you what you're looking at. So the blue is all the facilities that would be in place through Phase 1 and Phase 2. Okay? So all 8 of those sand beds would be planned to be put in place. And then for the most part, the green would be future facilities, but they are all there to accommodate future needs, future treatment needs at least, okay, for the Pompanesett Bay nitrogen goals. So everything fits. It's tight, but everything fits on the site. And Joe, if I can get I don't know if I can get the cursor to work here. Yeah, I can't. But you're referring to that kind of brown area towards the upper middle of the site, I think, right?
Just the upper center, that whole area there is available.
Yeah, yep. So that's your current site, and this is enough. You know, we looked at flows, what we're calling like close to like build-out flows for Pompanesett Bay, and there's enough treatment capacity to handle those flows, okay? Not much more capacity, but enough for what you need, okay? This is a rough rendition of what something might look like on the Wacoit Bay side of the town. This is one of the properties that was identified, and it just shows sand beds as well as treatment, and this is by no means final. We're looking at other sites, and I just wanted to, you know, kind of show that, you know, size-wise, and, you know, it would fit on some of these properties that are available out there, so.
Everything comes full circle, because that's almost exactly where the Otis plant is now.
Yes, it's not far away from there, that's right. Yes. So again, we are looking at that more intensely, but that just, you know, there's properties available out there. This pie chart just shows how Pompanesett Bay TMDL would be met, and I'll show the Wacoit Bay in a minute, but you could see with this about 75% of this is being met through sewering, and the other 25% is shellfish, stormwater fertilizers, and IA. So most of this is sewering. For Wacoit, it's maybe about 60% sewering, and we can handle a lot more with the shellfish in Wacoit Bay. And then the balance is stormwater, fertilizer management, and IA systems. Yep.
You know, one question has to come up in the end because it will drive everything on both sides for both estuaries. But the plan was built around a thing called build-out volume. Today, we have roughly 16,000, let's say, people living in Mashpee. What is the estimated build-out volume? Do you have a number on the population or not?
So I have it in terms of flow, but I don't have the number of people, so I'd
Well,
have to get
How
that.
much greater is the flow 20 years from now than it is today?
So, Joe, I'd have to get back to you on that, because
Yeah.
what I know is just the total amount of flow to accommodate, so I understand what you're asking, I just don't have that number, okay? So,
That's just so that everybody will understand that the reason why everything's a little bigger than it looks like it should be is exactly that, because it had to be designed for what the population will be 20 years from now.
Right.
Now, the town's done a few good things. They've taken a lot of property off the market so that they can't be developed. That will help us freeze the processing of septic waste at levels that we can manage. If everything in town was allowed to develop, this whole plan wouldn't help us at all.
so I'll have to get that information for you.
Okay.
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I'm going to show a couple different views of this, but I just want to explain what this is. Included in this Notice of Project Change document is a kind of a financial map that looks at the years going forward to the end of the first watershed permit, which we're currently showing is the year 2050. And what this is intended to show is proposed appropriations going forward over the years. These are all in, I want to make sure everybody understands, these are in 2024 dollars. And Select Board asked us to also show these in the year that the appropriation would take place. So we'll show two of these tables. But it's just, it shows a plan going forward, including all the phases that are needed to be in compliance with your first watershed permit, which is through phase 6. And what we have going forward are initially phases 1, 2, and 3 being larger projects. And then once the infrastructure is in place for Wacoit and Pompanesett Bay, then going forward we have smaller projects happening every couple of years to eventually come into compliance with your TMDLs. And I have a couple other ways that I'll show this to you, but this is a figure from the Notice of Project Change, and I'm happy to go back to this too if you want. But this is another way of looking at it. The blue line is Pompanesett Bay, progress towards your 75% compliance, and the orange is progress towards the Wacoit Bay, 75% compliance. So you can see for phases 1 and 2, we are eventually going to be at 42% compliance. And then for phase 3, we're proposing that you then go to Wacoit Bay, and also for phase 4, so that by the time you're finished with phase 4, you have similar progress achieved for both watersheds. And then phases 5 and 6 would round out your 75% compliance. And then this just shows in a little bit finer detail, we're breaking up phases going beyond phase 3, and you could see every few years there's a proposed project, but they'd be smaller projects. You can see phase 4 we've got divided up into 4 parts, 5 into 3, and then phase 6 into 4 parts. And you can see the nitrogen progress to the far right. And you'd eventually be right around your 75% compliance with the plan. And the intent is to, to some extent, switch back and forth from watershed to watershed. Sometimes we have both of them being attended to, trying to match a reasonable project size going forward, so. I'm happy to go back if you have other questions on this. The final items that I just wanted to talk about are, what's next. So we have the public review of this draft document. We've, review with the select board, the town administration, and sewer commission. Our next official step, I would say, is to go before the MEPA process. Once the town grants permission for that. Another step is continued implementation of this program. We do have, as I said, an 8-phase program, 6 phases needed to achieve compliance with the first watershed permit, so continue to go through those phases. Applying for watershed permits, that's going to be necessary prior to the year 2030. That's to achieve the 75% compliance. Part of that application is the state provides the opportunity to do a fiscal sustainability evaluation to kind of look at the cost of the program and how you would fund it. So that's something that could be included in that. In addition, in 2030, you'd have at least another update on this plan that I'm presenting today. So that's approximately every 5 years they're looking for that. So treated effluent recharge evaluations, as we just talked a little bit about that for Pompanesett Bay, and it's also required on Wacoit Bay. This change in the state rules with regard to this treated water recharge disposal to the ground has slowed down a lot of projects on the Cape, and we thought we're going to have a difficult time getting a permit for phase 2, but that's well underway, and we're expecting we're going to get it. So, yes, Joe.
Someone told me that Falmouth is going to use an outflow, that they've got permission to use it now.
Falmouth is in the process of doing that. I mean, it's not in design, but they are, yes, they're in the process.
Has GHD or anyone that's working with us evaluated the idea of Mashpee using an outflow now that the thing seems to have changed?
So I will say that the process, and if I could, I'll answer your question. The process in Falmouth was first to determine that they couldn't go to ground anywhere else, that they were out of options.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened here yet. An ocean outfall is the most expensive option. So I would say that is on the horizon, but we need to look to see that you don't have other spots to go to.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
If we have to, we will. Is that what you said?
Well, I guess that's what I would say. Yeah. Well.
But by then, somebody else will have knocked down the barriers. Yeah. Okay.
It's the most expensive. It's the most expensive option.
Well, it has to be maintained. That's one of the problems.
I mean, it's years of permitting. It's not easy, So it's the last. I mean, I guess I would call it's kind of like the last resort. Falmouth doesn't have anywhere else to go. So that's why. All right. So
Thank you.
We just want to make sure that you don't have other options before we go to that step. Okay. So for treated effluent recharge evaluations, sorry, just let me get back into my frame of thought here. So some options that exist for Pompanesett Bay for your existing site would be to potentially send more flow to your existing beds, and we'd have to work with the state to see if they will allow that. So that's a possibility. For Wacoit Bay, we are looking currently at several sites. That evaluation is currently underway for Wacoit. I would say for Pompanesett Bay, we don't need it for phase 2, so that's not being investigated right now. Okay. Yes.
So am I understanding it correctly that the current facility is only addressing the Papanasset watershed?
It
And
is,
there'll be a different site for the Wacoit
yes,
TBD?
yes, correct. Which is the next topic. So that's the initiate Wacoit Bay infrastructure conceptual layout. We're looking at that right now for like a facility site, a recharge site, and we've kind of laid out a collection system area for like the first phase of that area for the Wacoit watershed. So that's underway, looking at that right now, establishing costs for that.
Is there a town map that shows which part goes to Wacoit Bay watershed, which is part of Wacoit watershed and which is part of Papanasset watershed?
So it's not a very big view.
No, not in this presentation.
But is it?
So, no, I can tell you what, if you look here, you can,
Yeah, okay.
if you look here, you could see it. See the blue lines there? The blue lines are watershed lines. So the line to the left, that's, if you follow from below the word "of" in the title of the slide, that blue line that goes down the slide, that's, to the right side is Pompanesett Bay, to the left side is Wacoit.
That blue line, is that a water body or what?
No,
the blue line is
no,
just
it's
the
an arbitrary line.
Oh.
Under OF, it's straight down, from OF down to the bottom of the map. It's town's cut in half vertically.
Okay.
The exact line is very variable, but it's there. It's a division by the center of the town,
Oh, okay.
See that
east
line
and
there?
west.
See that line right there? See the line where I pointed at?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the left side is Wacoit, to the right side is Pompanesett.
Yep, understand, yep.
Next step is continued evaluation of private facilities. So there were private facilities identified in the 2015 plan for potential municipal connections. Those fell through. We are now currently looking at a couple of new ones, not new facilities, but new facilities for us to look at, Willow Bend and Southport, and that evaluation is currently underway. We're continuing to evaluate the opportunity for satellite treatment facilities. The one that we're targeting right now is a potential Mashpee-Wakeby satellite treatment facility. This is to the area just north of Wakeby Pond. This is being done in coordination with the diagnostic study that was just released in December for Mashpee-Wakeby Ponds. And this is a project that was listed on the state funding list. So we're in the process of concluding a study while also talking to Sandwich because of the potential collaboration opportunities that exist there. Regional options, Joint Base Cape Cod remains an option that's out there, maybe for sending sludge to maybe in the future. Continued coordination with the neighboring towns. We have had sporadic discussions or there's IMA meetings that continue to occur with Mashpee, Sandwich, Barnstable. And adaptive management program that's going to continue, that allows you to make modifications to your plan going forward. I just want to point out a couple of items that we are going to be addressing as a result of comments made in the select board meeting. One of them was just to take a look at the water use data to make sure that there wasn't a change that occurred during COVID or after COVID, so we're taking a look at that. I mentioned that the select board did ask us to provide a table of future appropriations in the year of the appropriation request. We have right now put all costs in a single dollar year, 2024. That makes it easy for you to move dollars around as you need to, but we will do it in the year of the request too, so you have that. And there was also a request to think about whether or not there are some ways that additional protection could be provided, to critical zones, protection of the ponds, for example. So that's, we're thinking about that too, so. So that's all I had. I don't know if you had any other questions. Joe? Yep.
Can we have this presentation in either the direct form that you've just given it to us, or if there's any other thought to simplifying it a little bit, you can get it up present on the town website under the sewer commission's section.
Yep. We could work
This is-
on like a simplified version. It sounds, I mean, we could certainly give you
Yeah,
the
but give it a title
presentation, but-
people will recognize, like where are we going over the next 30 years, quote unquote.
If I may suggest, so we're in the habit, and plus for openness to the public, brain's doing a little fart, but the goal is we'll take the slide directly after this meeting. It'll end up on the page. What we could ask GH to do is maybe give us a bullet list that summarizes what this whole big slideshow is, so that people don't have to read the whole slide if they don't want to. At least they can see it. But just for public,
Simplify it.
yeah,
That's what
we
you said.
can do
That's
like
what I
just a
said,
bullet list.
too.
But we try to keep whatever's presented
Yeah.
incomplete as we put it up on the webpage, but we can make a definite simplified version to do as an addition to.
Yep, we can do that. Sometimes we've created like a fact sheet that just kind of covers.
That was very, very appropriate. Thank you. Good job.
A
Yes.
question, so looking at the agenda item, I assume that there is a change, but I didn't see that there is any change in anything that you presented, so I'm wondering what was the purpose of this update?
It's called the process is called notice of project change when you update your plan, okay?
Okay.
And the changes that have occurred are perhaps somewhat in the background, but it's updating of all of your, water use and population, that's changes that have occurred since the last plan, and to look at how you're progressing towards meeting your nitrogen goals. Looking at the last plan that you had in 2015, what it relied on to try and meet those goals, and the realization that some of those are not going to work in their entirety. For example, shellfish was a major component of meeting those goals. We had to scale that back. So it's a tweak on things.
So is there like a table that says this was what it was before and this is what it is now in terms of what changed between this plan and the last plan?
I think it's more of a posting, this is the way it is today, instead of last time, 2-3 years ago.
Right.
It's just an auditing of the reality of what's going on.
Right.
That's why you do this.
Right.
It doesn't mean we've changed the plan or its intention or anything else. Doesn't mean that. It sounds like it, but that's not the goal. The goal here is just to make sure that everybody's on board and knows what's going on.
But you may have a case where in updating the next plan, that could have a significant impact on the project in terms of funding. Then what do you do?
I'm not sure. Could you ask that again?
So right now, it seems like there is no impact to either the schedule or the cost, right? So next time when you do an update, there could be a potential change to the project funding or the schedule, which could either delay the project or significantly add costs. Then it could become an issue, isn't it?
I think what he's saying, yes, these things can happen, and they'll show up when we do this, when we renew things. We'll find out that it's gonna cost us more to do that, or we don't need to do this, and we change it and say, this is the update of where we are today, okay? Yes, there'll be change in there, there'll be cost change in there, there'll be scheduling changes in there, but this is the problem with a large project. It has hundreds of variations, none of which are under control.
Right, that's right.
So what you do is you just detail them so nothing gets lost. It's not a case of telling everybody when the next problem is. No, it's just a reality check all the time, keep it in reality. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I don't think there's a yes or no to the way you answered the question.
But I think, in the future, if there is a change, everybody would want to know why is why is there a change in cost or change in schedule? What changed?
Yeah.
Is it a wrong calculation of the shellfish, or is the wrong calculation of the water recharge flow, whatever it is? Because people would want to know that.
Right.
So if you already have a template that says, this is the change, no impact, this is the change, then in the future, when you make a change that results in a cost impact, it's easy to, all the hooks are in place.
I hear. So
That's all.
one thing that I wish is that the state calls this a notice of project change. I didn't call it that.
Yeah,
What I like to call this is it's a watershed management plan update.
update, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, so it's really an update. Where do you stand? Now, you haven't you haven't seen the results of phase one yet.
Exactly.
Okay? But going forward, we would hope that, over time, you're going to start to see you'll start to see results in plans like this or presentations. You would hopefully be able to see progress. Okay? We just can't show that yet. So, yes.
There's one note.
Mark, you also, this is Meredith, President. You
Go
had
for it.
also said that you do have information on changes in flow and changes in population. So will you be able to make whatever those changes have been available? Because you have talked about the changes that have occurred is that the shellfish propagation has changed, less from what was projected in 2015 to what it is now. Is there a number that we could look at with that? You also said that there were certain facilities that were private facilities that were going to be looked at in the 2015 plan. Some of those didn't pan out, so now you're on to the two that you mentioned, which was Willow Bend and Southport. So I think in a way that's what Mohan is saying. What was different, what was being considered in 2015 and what changed in 2025.
Okay.
And the only two numbers that I was thinking about just now was you have the data, can you share that with us then? What are the changes? I think Joe also mentioned changes in population, changes in flow, and changes in, what was the third one? Water use. Those three.
But the one that I can tell you about the wastewater facilities, it was the Mashpee Commons. That's the one that didn't pan out. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I'll have to get those, but we could share those changes. Sure. Yep.
I know you don't have them right now, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying that in the future, could you provide us with
Yes.
that?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Al, I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. What comes to mind as we talk about changes is technology. In the next 5 to 10 years, technology will change that could affect this project. Like these satellite facilities that were now the smaller facilities, those weren't considered back in 2015. So are we anticipating potential technological changes that could impact the project going forward? I know you can't see 20 years in the future, but that kind of thing does come up. So we will have potential technology change, and new technologies will be approved by DEP at some point. How do you factor those in?
So the best answer I can give you is that the term that I use for change in these processes, it's adaptive management. As these options become available, you will have the opportunity to pilot them or wait for them to be piloted and tried out in other places and implement them. So this is not a plan that's written in stone. I mean, the state wants you to continue to update these. So you'll have opportunities if something like that were to pan out.
There is a line somewhere back about 5 pages that said the SC had asked about changes in the water flow from our freshwater supply. What was that issue all about? Or why was that brought up for as a
So you
question?
said from the select board?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, it was more, was there a...
Since COVID, it says on the...
Yeah, was there a change in water use post-COVID? Like, were there more people staying here? So that's something we need to check with the water use data.
What was the logic of that question? I don't understand its impact.
It has to, I would have to do more with progress and how much more nitrogen you might be getting. That's how we determine how much nitrogen is in the ground, is getting into the ground, is through the water use
Well, that
data.
doesn't correlate with COVID. I mean, I don't see the,
So you might have people, as an example, you might have someone who had a summer home that made this a full-time home. So now, rather than 3 months, they're here for 12. So you have more use of the property, potentially.
we had all their kids during COVID, we know.
Right, right. So we look at these at numbers,
Yeah.
and so we just need to look at and see if that happened, so.
Mark, was part of your presentation going to be expanding on the IUP update, or is that for another?
So I can speak a little bit about that, yep. Oh, yep, go ahead.
May I want to jump back real quick. We were talking about how to, Joe, you'd asked about, he could get us the flow numbers, but how many people is that, antiquate to, and then how to control or manage build out in the future. So the flow neutral bylaw actually is designed to specifically address that. So, because there have been locations, not saying here in Mashpee, where just building got out of control and the planning board or nobody was really controlling it. So they built that in the flow neutral bylaw, saying, how many bedrooms you can have on an acre of land and so on. So at least it gives us a base point. There are obviously triggers for variances, and we can always approve how to make it bigger, but that's the base of the flow neutral bylaw. It's not going to answer the question you had specifically about how many people does it calculate out to, but whatever that flow number would be, you'd basically just say that, it's 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet, which is 2 people. 50, 55 gallons a day a person's use, but we'll get you that number more directly. But to answer the future build out, that's what the flow neutral bylaw addresses.
My question was, what was the quote-unquote future build-out used in the 2015?
Okay, I thought you wanted to know how it was being controlled. Okay, we can get that for you then.
Okay?
Yep.
In other words, I know what's happened in this town. We had 4,000 people in the 80s. We had no pollution. And we got to the 2020s, we got 16,000 people. We have 75% more pollution. And that's what we've got to get rid of. We can either get rid of 75% of the people, real simple, then we won't have a septic problem, okay? But the issue here is, what the heck did the state hang us with called build-out? Because whatever instructions they gave us, they said something to the effect is take today's population and multiply it by a number. That's the way it probably was created. So all I want to know is the reality of that, because the town has done a lot of things to slow down the growth. Never mind the changing of the housing and the lot sizes and all of that. The reality is we've taken 40% of the potential land off the market. And that has a definitive effect that may save us, and any other community trying to take care of the septic problems.
Okay, we'll get you that. No, I got all that written down now.
Jared, do you have something else?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Al, you asked about the the satellite facility. So we did submit that facility as part of a PEF submission for funding to DEP back in August. Had not yet evaluated it yet, but we submitted something, and you were very lucky. You were there aren't a lot of towns that made the funding list this year. The wastewater, or what they call the clean water funding side of the SRF program, had less money this year. They had to give some of it over to the drinking water side to handle PFAS issues. So there were fewer communities funded this year, but this project was funded, which is great. We are closing in on the end of the study. I will say that one thing that we have been diverted on slightly in starting in January was after the diagnostic study came out on the ponds, we did meet with Sandwich and engage them in is this something that they would be interested in? And I think, Jared, you probably talked to them about it some time ago. But once the study came out and we had some scientific information we could talk to them about, we we asked if they would be interested, and we've had they've been engaged in this, and I'm not prepared to report anything yet, but they are engaged. I will just say they are engaged in this idea, and I feel like we need to see this through because this is a potential, as you know, I mean, the Mass Estuaries Report deals with nitrogen, and that's what I'm here to talk about, or what I was talking about. Diagnostic study is phosphorus, and phosphorus is the nutrient that impacts your freshwater bodies. This project has the potential of helping nitrogen and phosphorus reductions, and could be a bonus for both towns, So I feel like we need to see this through, and but they're engaged with us. Let me put it that way. So, yes.
Sorry, I'd like to make a comment just on that. So I've been studying the design a little bit of the water resource recovery facility and toured the plant a couple of times. So the current design, as we all know, it removes nitrogen primarily. Some phosphorus is removed.
Some phosphorus is removed.
So if you compare this design to some of the other sewage treatment plants, let's say in Colorado, Utah, California, Illinois, those plants have an extra step that removes phosphorus, right? Either via chemical process by adding alum or biologically using bacteria. Both are equally effective, and the resultant effluent has little or no phosphorus, right?
Yes.
In contrast, our design is going to have a lot of phosphorus in the effluent, and any freshwater body down gradient of the watershed is going to get negatively impacted. We know that from Ashumet Pond, from the base. So my question is this, right? We are embarking on this project, multi-million-dollar project, primarily to address nitrogen, knowing that there is a negative impact with the phosphorus plume that could happen if the effluent is discharged just like that. So why can't we add one step to just remove phosphorus and have a more holistic solution for the problem?
So I wouldn't call it a lot of phosphorus leaving the plant.
Yes.
I mean, there is a reduction that's occurring. We just haven't targeted it, so we couldn't meet a very specific limit. But there's a good amount that's still being removed in the process. Okay, there isn't a downstream water body that's directly impacted by phosphorus right now for this facility. Now, Wacoit Bay, where we're looking there, that would be a potentially different story, potentially, okay? But for the Pompanesett Bay facility, that is not the case. And I would say that there is a way to, with the advanced process that you have, we could do phosphorus removal if we ever needed to some extent in that process. So
It's not there right
it's
now.
not, well,
but
we
you
don't
could
have
add
the
it
chemical,
easily.
we'd have to add a chemical in there, but we could add chemical, we could add like you said, alum or ferric, and get some targeted removal for that too.
Okay.
All right, so, but it's not needed right now in Pompanesett for that specific area.
Because there's no freshwater body down gradient. Okay.
Yeah.
Could I make it a point? Back in 2015, it was seriously studied, all right? But there is nothing to say that the amount of septic waste that contains phosphorus is destroying our freshwater ponds, all right? It is not a beneficial thing going into them, but the natural process in the ponds is more than capable of taking care of the kind of sewers, wet water, that will be left over and not processed for phosphorus. So phosphorus was not considered as a hazard. You made a statement there's large quantities of phosphorus that are going to go into the ponds if we don't do it. That's not true. There's a known amount that will go into the ponds, and that known amount was never proven to do harm to the ponds. As we got into it, we found out that There was a lot of man-made phosphorus being thrown into the ponds indirectly because they're in a water course that came out of the cranberry bogs. All
I'm
right?
not sure if that's true, because.
It is true. That was pretty well confirmed. Now, I'm not saying what your point is valid, but your point is perspective. And I'm cautioning you not to say that large quantities of phosphorus are a problem. It's not true, large quantities. It does exist. You're academically correct. I'm not complaining about it. But to address that right now is also to derail the reality of taking care of the other things that are polluting the ponds, that we can afford to take care of. We can't go and we could go and remanage this whole thing, but it'll just be thrown in disarray for years.
So I can
So-
show you a document from the base that shows the phosphorus plume that is impacting a Shumat pond. And that sewage treatment plant at the base closed 30 years ago. After 30 years, you still have problem from the phosphorus plume. Ashley knows about it, we all know about it.
And that's directly
And what was the
related
original source of the phosphorus is my question.
to people. It's a wastewater problem. It was their wastewater treatment facility their sand beds were leaching
There was
into.
no treatment up there when they had 2,000 people on the base. They were dumping it directly into the soil. No treatment.
There was a very large treatment facility that was in operation for years. and
That's
it
not a
was-
large facility.
It was a large
Large
facility,
facility.
yes. That's why we've done multiple alum treatments on a Shumat pond. It was a phosphorus plume entering the pond by way
Okay.
of their sand beds.
Okay.
Yeah, so it
And
is a
how old is
reality.
that phosphorus plume? That's my question.
I mean, it's over 50 years old.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. There were 3,000, 4,000 people up there at one time,
Correct.
okay? They're not there anymore.
Right, but they're still leaching.
Yeah, but the damage is done. The plume is.
If there's
is reduced.
5% of the people there now, that was there in the past, there's only 5% of the pollution now that there was in the past. Do you follow my point?
No, I'm not following.
No.
Okay.
I mean, we can take it offline, but.
Yeah.
you know, but I
I
have.
just don't want to
because-
misconstrue the public either, because phosphorus is a
It sits there.
wastewater issue. It's not a cranberry bog issue. It's a collective problem. It's not, we
It's an
can't just,
accumulative problem.
yeah, we can't just point fingers at the agriculture. That's part of the problem, but wastewater, fertilizer use,
Yeah.
and other, areas of input are also, worth mentioning.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mark,
I don't have any questions.
thank you very
All right,
much.
thanks.
At this point, we normally have the chair's report. Meredith, do you have something you'd like to add to the meeting?
No, not at this time, I don't.
Okay. I can just mention that I spent an hour or so at the plant this morning. I was very impressed at how far we've come. It's nice to see power to units and at least some water flowing,
Lights.
lights, heat, a few things like that. It would be a great time, if you haven't been over to the plant in, say, a month or so, to take a walk over and take a look, because it's starting to come alive. Yes, Sandy?
I just ask that it is an active construction site, that you reach out to our RPRs out there.
Yes.
They will show you around. We don't want
Yes.
anybody falling in any holes. I know a lot of you know the site well, but that's when we get complacent too, so.
Thank you. Jared, floor is yours.
So I was going to address, but Mark already got into it, that we got an email from Sandwich that it looks promising. They're willing to at least talk and see, what level of participation they want to have, or that they're willing to participate. So that was actually a very, to me, an encouraging email. The only other thing I really want to talk about is we're now getting the policies finalized. They'll be coming up on the webpage soon after we get them voted here. Trying to get the munis finalized. We're actually going to have an on-site training soon and we're going to do a whole mock billing run-through. We're also working on getting the permitting process up and running, and then ordering a lot of the small pieces of equipment and laboratory equipment we're going to need for when the plant opens. So we're just trying to get all these little final things done before we open the door now. So we've been running around like ants in the office, and tackling all these little tasks that are very important.
Where are you planning on putting the lab? Downstairs?
So a lot of the lab equipment that we're getting right now, it's there is an office inside the building. We'll predominantly be working out of there. A lot of it is stuff that when the next building is built, the admin building, is mainly when we're going to break it all out and get it in there, but we're purchasing a lot of it now.
Did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Other than that, we're just, like I said, we're getting very excited for this plant to open soon, so a lot of things are happening at once.
Our first well monitoring
Oh, yes, we also,
last
yeah,
week. Yeah.
yep, Ashley did our first well monitorings. We have to get 3 of them done prior to the startup. So we're in that process too.
I have a question for you, Jared. Are we any closer to having a narrowing down of the date for the plant opening? Because it seems as if there are more and more questions coming from residents who are saying, I can't really live with this possibility of sometime in the spring. Can we get them closer to a narrower date?
Yes, I could have Sandy come and talk to it, but one of the things we're waiting on is for the contractor to give us their schedule for startup. Once we get that schedule, that'll allow us to then figure out when everybody can start by, and then we can back from that to when we're going to send out the notice of project change and everything else. We just don't want to obviously send it out too early and not meet those goals, but we need that list. And then I was assured today, I got a phone call saying that that's exactly what they were working on, so I expect it soon.
So next meeting for sure.
Definitely by next meeting.
Okay. Website updates. Catherine, do you have anything that you want to add?
I checked in with Karen today on something, but next week I think I'll meet with her and we'll go through a couple of updates I think the website needs. That's it. Unless anybody has any suggestions.
Oh, thank you. Correspondence has been asked and answered. I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Seconded.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Unanimous.
Unanimous? Meeting is adjourned.